The collapse began with a single flourish of an executive pen. On a wet Friday morning in early April 25, cameras flashed in the Rose Garden as President Donald Trump returned to the Oval Office on a tidal wave of fury and nostalgia, signed what pundits would later nickname the Hammer Order. The document was barely 6 pages long, yet its reach was planetary. Tariffs of 60, 80, even 100% slapped on every imported commodity, service, and intellectual property. It was an equal opportunity bludgeon: steel from Canada, medical tubing from Singapore, software patches from Bangalore, antibiotics from Finland. Overnight, the greenback cratered. Interactive Brokers froze its trading terminals under the weight of margin calls. Tesla halted production because no one could afford the lithium-ion cells shipped through Shanghai. And Walgreens stores grew eerie as shelves emptied faster than drones could deliver contraband generics. By the end of summer, hyperinflation had shredded paychecks into confetti. Banknotes became bookmarks in used cookbooks because flour and cooking oil cost more than the printed money itself. Citizens with fading memories of prosperity were forced to choose between fuel, food, and the medicine that kept their hearts beating and their children breathing. That was the world Officer Gabriel Ramos patrolled, if the word patrolled still applied to a city where cruisers sat immobilized for lack of gasoline and riot-scarred blocks flickered under scavenged LED strips. Chicago's skyline, once an advertisement for tensile steel and modern optimism, was now haloed in smoke from makeshift trash fires curling upward through shattered windows. The official map called the district Wacker South. Locals called it the Throat because it swallowed hope and choked anyone who lingered. Gabriel's life, like the city's, had narrowed to raw arithmetic. His daughter Luna's insulin regimen required precisely 2 vials every month. Before the tariffs, they cost $40. Now $1,000 when you could find them. And Luna was running out. She sat at home on their sagging couch, bundled in a hoodie too large for her 11-year-old frame, sketching silver aspens with shaky fingers whenever glucose dips blurred her vision. Gabriel rationed her doses quarter milliliter by agonizing quarter milliliter, praying for reprieve that never came. Rumors, however, traveled faster than fear. In warehouse speakeasies papered with peeling election posters, people whispered about a caravan of counterfeit medicine funneled through the Peregrine Cartel, a ruthless syndicate that thrived on scarcity. They acquired stolen pharmaceutical precursors, slapped forged holograms on vials, and sold them to desperate diabetics and chemo patients at gunpoint prices. In a cruel twist, some batches almost worked, just enough active ingredient to grant a week of reprieve before organ damage resumed. Counterfeit hope was the cartel's most valuable product. Gabriel swore he would never descend to that underworld. Then Luna's glucometer flashed the dreaded red octagon: low battery, low sugar, and the last legitimate vial hissed empty. The medical-grade smell of alcohol swabs still lingered in the apartment when he made the call that changed everything. The contact was Anya Leitonen, a Karelian chemist who had defected from a failing Nordic biotech firm and threaded her way through Canada under an assumed passport. She possessed the rare gift of synthesis improvisation, able to coax usable insulin analogs from lab scraps and industrial-grade solvents. But the FDA no longer issued emergency use waivers, and screwdrivers had replaced peer review as her primary tools. Anya hid in an abandoned Tesla service center south of Grant Park, repurposing its diagnostic clean room into a clandestine microreactor suite. It was said she could spin raw cortisol into insulin if given enough time and reagent. Time, however, was the one reagent she lacked. The cartel had placed a bounty on her head the moment she refused exclusive employment. Gabriel met her after dusk, parking his dent-speckled Crown Vic beside a pile of shattered supercharger pylons. He did not announce himself as a cop. The badge on his belt was an invitation to get shot. Instead, he carried Luna's empty vial as proof of need. Anya, pale-haired, eyes the green of Baltic seagrass, examined the container under a flickering inspection lamp. "This lot number," she murmured, voice roughened by sleepless nights, "is from Indianapolis Facility 4. The cartel's version uses the same mold, but the glycation pattern is off by 1 carbon. Meaning? Meaning your daughter's liver would drown in free radicals inside 3 days. We can do better." She explained her plan in clipped Scandinavian syllables. A farm-safe armored convoy was scheduled to cross the I-94 Skyway at 0200, carrying culture-grade particulates, the last legal substrate for biosym insulin west of the Hudson. The cartel intended to hijack the shipment and refine it into a knockoff line they called Glucosur Gold. If Anya and Gabriel intercepted the convoy first, she could synthesize a life-saving batch for Luna and shatter the cartel's monopoly in one strike. It sounded insane. No cruiser backup, no precinct authorization, no union lawyer to clean up the fallout, just a lone cop with a service Glock and a fugitive chemist whose idea of personal defense was a glass vial of liquid nitrogen. Yet Gabriel felt a tectonic certainty settle behind his sternum. Law had become a luxury, justice a rumor. Protect and serve meant whatever his shaking daughter needed it to mean. He agreed. The night they rolled out, snow flurries drifted through street-level embers. Their getaway vehicle was a Tesla Model Y whose autopilot chip had fried during a brownout and now obeyed only manual commands, an advantage Anya observed because remote kill codes still need electricity. They siphoned ethanol-blended gasoline from a seized tourist bus and poured it through makeshift filters of activated charcoal and coffee grounds. The car smelled like a distillery on wheels, but the motor spat to life in trembling silence. Downtown arteries were clogged with the detritus of failed evacuations, upended mailboxes, collapsed bus shelters, an entire interactive broker's billboard face down across Michigan Avenue like a fallen tin god. Above, a half-illuminated marquee cycled glitchy advertisements for once unstoppable brands, Tesla Cybertruck, Walgreens Rewards, Make America Earn Again. Each slogan felt like a ghost's farewell. Gabriel drove. Anya navigated using a mismatched trio of tablets patched into outdated NOAA satellites. Outside, the urban palette shifted from sodium orange to magnesium white as lake effect snow intensified. Radio chatter on the police band was a chaos of half-codes, reports of looting on East Belmont, we are out of units, repeat, out of units. Gabriel's thumb hovered over the transmit switch, itching to respond, but he forced himself to remain dark. Every syllable risked detection by the cartel's scrambler arrays. At 0130 they reached the Kenwood flyover, a skeletal ramp that arced above freight yards studded with derelict boxcars. Rotting insulation dangled like intestines from the overpass joints. Under normal conditions, semi-trailers thundered overhead, now it was a perfect ambush corridor. Anya's maps indicated the convoy would downshift here before merging onto the skyway, its automated speed governors obeying the incline gradient. They ditched the Tesla behind a toppled salt spreader and crept forward on foot. Gabriel's breath plumed in white-blue bursts. Anya's compact, breathless laughter betrayed adrenaline rather than mirth. She keyed a laser rangefinder at the roadbed, calculating drop distance for a homemade spike strip constructed from salvage yard rebar welded into caltrops. Do you always laugh before committing felonies? Gabriel hissed. Only the interesting ones, she replied. He almost smiled until headlights bloomed on the horizon and the pavement began to tremble. Two SUV vanguards led the convoy, each bristling with radar-absorbing panels and manned by cartel scouts clutching SMGs. Behind them, the farm-safe 18-wheeler, a silver whale stitched with biometric locks, rumbled forward, oblivious to the wolves escorting it to slaughter. A boxy utility van brought up the rear, likely housing jammer gear that cloaked cartel transmissions from law enforcement satellites that no longer had power anyway. Gabriel and Anya exchanged a single nod. She triggered the collapsible caltrop rig, sending a lattice of steel across the asphalt mere seconds before the first SUV's tires shredded like wet paper. The vehicle fishtailed, slammed into the guardrail, and erupted in a blossom of glass. Almost simultaneously, Gabriel stepped into the exposed lane, leveled his Glock, and fired 3 rounds into the air, pure distraction. The second SUV slammed brakes, slewed sideways, and exactly as Anya predicted, jackknifed into the farm-safe trailer's left flank. Metal shrieked, sparks cascaded, and the entire convoy ground to a screeching halt beneath a blizzard of shattered LED headlamps. Then things went wrong. From the rear van spilled 4 cartel enforcers in thermal body armor, unfazed by the snowstorm. They weren't after the driver, they wanted cargo integrity. One lugged a pallet hacksaw, another a portable fingerprint spoofer. Gabriel dropped behind a concrete barrier, heart hammering. His pulse drowned out the hiss of drifting snow as he weighed impossible odds for rifles against 1 pistol and no guarantee the farm-safe driver was still alive. Anya solved his dilemma with chemical bravado. She hurled a stainless steel thermos beyond the barrier. Liquid nitrogen erupted into an ice fog thick as cotton, freezing moisture out of the air and cloaking the lane in opaque white. Shouts erupted, Spanish, Russian, English expletives followed by a torrent of blind gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off guardrails while Gabriel vaulted the barrier, seizing the confusion. 2 rounds from his Glock dropped the nearest gunman, a third snapped the cable of the fingerprint spoofer, sending the device skittering into the darkness. But the gunfire was a dinner bell. Somewhere deeper in the city, cartel reinforcements were already warming engines, triangulating muzzle flashes, preparing to seal every on-ramp. Gabriel and Anya had maybe 6 minutes to secure the insulin precursors, torch the fugitives' electronics, and vanish. Inside the shattered semi's cargo bay, they discovered a small fortune, vacuum-sealed smart crates emitting the lullaby beep of constant temperature monitors. Anya's gloved hands flew across control dials, disabling biometric locks with a bypass code she'd memorized back when Finland still held biotech conferences in spotless glass atriums. She withdrew a single vial, milky, luminous, impossibly precious, and held it to the truck's interior light. 900 milliliters of recombinant polypeptide suspension, she whispered. Enough for thousands of doses. We only need one, Gabriel replied, thinking of Luna's sunken cheeks. And the city needs the rest, Anya countered. Help me. They began loading crates onto a pallet jack scavenged from the trailer wall. Snow gusted through bullet holes in the cargo doors, powdering their shoulders as they worked. Sirens wailed distantly, not police sirens, Gabriel realized with a stab of dread, but the shrill electronically modulated banshee call the cartel used to signal blockades. They were out of time. Anya pointed to the front of the trailer where the floor hatch led to the cab. There's a panic haul rail under the engine block, she said. If we hook the pallet, the Tesla can drag it. It'll shear the wheels off. Then we ride the sparks. Gabriel wanted to argue numbers, torque, tensile strength. Instead, he pictured Luna's trembling pen strokes on stained drawing paper. He gripped the pallet handle, muscles screaming, and together they muscled the precious cargo down the ramp into the blinding snow. Behind them, the city howled. The pallet screamed across asphalt like a meteor tail, showering molten sparks that hissed into the swirling snow. Gabriel jammed the Tesla's accelerator, nothing but a potentiometer hardwired to the battered inverter now, and prayed the motor windings would hold. The Model Y's rear bumper, reinforced with scavenged steel struts, groaned as the charity-sized sled fishtailed behind them. Anya crouched in the hatchback, one hand clamped to a ratchet strap, the other gripping a handheld spectrometer that doubled as an IR scope. Every few seconds she leaned into the freezing slipstream, scanning for heat signatures that might betray chasing engines. They hit Lake Shore Drive at 60, too fast for the bald winter tires, too slow to outrun cartel drones. Chicago's once proud promenade had become a gauntlet of burned-out delivery bots, half-collapsed viaducts, and impromptu barricades of shattered interactive billboards that once advertised Tesla's full self-driving version 11 before energy credits made such promises irrelevant. The Tesla fishtailed again, traction control long since overridden, as Gabriel threaded a path through what remained of Grant Park. The snowy grass was pitted by shell craters from last month's food riot suppression volleys. North or west? He barked, eyes flicking between the cracked windshield and the swaying cargo. North first, Anya shouted back. Cartel blockades sit on every westbound bridge. We need the river ice. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Ice meant they would attempt something borderline suicidal, but at this point suicide had become the resting heart rate of the city. Back at Wacker South, cartel comms erupted. The ambush on the Kenwood flyover was supposed to be a routine extraction. Instead, 4 men were dead, the cargo gone, and an off-grid chemist was headed somewhere with enough material to crater an illicit market. El Jabali, the Peregrine Cartel's Chicago sector chief, paced his penthouse war room, a gutted former Walgreens flagship whose fluorescent lights still flickered the chain's teal and coral branding. He slammed a call through to Colonel Arpid Varga, the Hungarian mercenary contractor who ran tactical for him. I want them before dawn, Jabali hissed. And I want that cop's head live-streamed on every Walgreens pharmacy monitor still working. Let the whole city see what happens when you steal my supply line. Varga, ever a man who understood currency in fear and blood, deployed the Mayfly drones, tri-rotor hunter-killers powered by the last reserve cells scavenged from abandoned Tesla superchargers. In a bleak twist of irony, the renewable engines Elon Musk once hailed as the salvation of American infrastructure were now fueling the city's descent into medieval bloodshed. Mayflies swept low over the lakefront, red LiDAR beams combing snow-cloaked streets. Inside the Tesla, Anya's spectrometer hiccuped, its display painting a heat blossom 2 blocks back. Gabriel swerved beneath a toppled "Make America Earn Again" banner as tracer rounds stitched orange stitching across the hood. They've got drone eyes, Anya yelled. EMP. Used our only cartridge last month, Gabriel snapped, keeping looters out of the precinct armory. Then we blind them the old-fashioned way. She clambered onto the pallet, pried open a cooler marked biohazard. Keep below 2 degrees, and plucked out a vial the size of a hummingbird's heart. The suspension inside glowed faintly cyan, instability crossing with bioluminescence. Anya uncapped it, jammed a hypodermic into the stopper, and extracted a single milliliter. Her breath smoked in the air as she murmured a Karelian prayer to whichever molecules kept binding affinities honest. Cover your eyes. She jabbed the plunger skyward and atomized the prototype insulin analog in a halo of shimmering mist. It hit the mayfly's forward sensors like paint across a windshield. The drone's proximity lidar read the aerosol as a kilometer of solid fog, panicked, and pitched into a lamppost in a blossom of lithium fire. Shrapnel hammered the Tesla's rear quarter panel. The pallet jounced but held. Emergency chemistry, Anya coughed, wiping residue from her cheek. Call it Plan B, B for blindness. Gabriel exhaled a laugh that sounded half hysteria, half relief, and floored the pedal. They hurtled north. At Navy Pier, the Ferris wheel stood motionless, rims sagging like a fractured halo above the dark lake. Its gondolas had been stripped for scrap long ago, leaving only skeletal spokes that hissed in the wind. Beneath the wheel sprawled a refugee shantytown stitched from billboard vinyl, credits accepted in canned beans, AA batteries, or prescription opioids. As Gabriel threaded the Tesla between barrel fires and homemade sledges, scavengers eyed the sparkling trail of insulin crates with rabid suspicion. A young woman with frostbitten lips shouted, "What medicine is that?" Her voice cracked with that particular blend of hope and rage that defined life after the hammer order. Gabriel's police instincts flared, but Anya rested a hand on his shoulder. "We can't stop. We save one, we doom all the others in our wake." He knew she was right. Still, those eyes haunted him as the car bumped onto cracked pavement beyond the pier. Ahead loomed the Chicago River, its surface layered in a treacherous mix of ice flows and open channels. The West Jackson Swing Bridge, once styled as a feat of graceful engineering, was frozen mid-pivot, blocking the main span. The only crossing left was a half-collapsed rail trestle whose girders dislocated like shattered ribs over the water. Gabriel pointed the Tesla at the trestle and accelerated. "Are you insane?" Anya shouted. "You wanted the river ice." He killed the headlights to avoid giving gunners an aiming beacon. The battery pack protested with thermal alarms, each beep a death knell he ignored. The front wheels hit the first girder with a metallic shriek. The pallet clanged behind them, sparks cascading onto black water. Twice the car dove into potholes big enough to hold a coffin, suspension screaming. Anya hung out the passenger window, lobbing magnesium flares behind them. When a second mayfly swept low in pursuit, the flare's white glare fooled its thermal optics into reading the collapsed trestle as empty space. This drone, too, met a fiery end, swan diving into the river with a hiss of steam. Midway across, the Tesla's front tire shredded against a jagged plate. The rim skidded on naked alloy, throwing a rooster tail of sparks. Gabriel fought the steering column as the sedan threatened to fishtail into open air. The pallet caught a crater, flipped sideways, and for an interminable heartbeat, the crates teetered on the brink. Gabriel felt time lurch, Luna's life, thousands of others, balancing against gravity's indifference. Then Anya lunged, burying her shoulder into the top crate, and the load thudded back onto the trestle by inches. They cleared the far bank at a crawl, rims incandescent. Behind, the trestle groaned and sagged. One final shudder, and a 50-yard section peeled away, plunging into the frigid river. Their path was gone, so were the drones for now. But cartel ground units would swing west to intercept. The next leg had to be underground. Beneath Merchandise Mart sprawled a forgotten labyrinth. The Chicago Pedway, a pre-tariff commuter artery of tiled tunnels and moving walkways. Power outages had left it pitch black. Rats the size of dachshunds skittered across stale puddles. Still, it offered cover from overhead drones and sniper nests. Gabriel located a maintenance hatch near Kinsey Street, pried it open with the Tesla's tire iron, and they manhandled the pallet down a narrow service stair. The air smelled of mildew, ozone, and burnt brake pads. Without cellular maps, Anya relied on half-remembered architectural plans to navigate. They pushed the pallet along dead escalators while fluorescent bulbs flickered sporadically on stored backup charge, painting scenes like strobe-lit nightmares. Derelict vending machines plastered with expired Walgreens flu-shot stickers. A ragged poster of a smiling Elon Musk beneath the slogan, "The future runs on optimism and lithium." Graffiti stencils of President Trump's unmistakable profile crowned with barbed wire and the caption, "Forever means forever." Gabriel's thighs burned with lactic acid. Yet he kept Luna front of mind, her breathy laughter the year he'd taken her to the planetarium, describing constellations with that earnest wonder only children own. He could not fail her now. Ahead, a dull glow swelled. Flashlights? Torches? No, generator floodlights. Anya swore under her breath. Cartel already has a sub-level market down here. They call it the Deep Shelf. Pharma swap meet every midnight. We need a detour. There is none. Pedway lines all converge at Riverside Hub. Then we roll through, Gabriel decided. He palmed his Glock, counted 6 rounds left. Anya rummaged her satchel, producing 2 glass spheres sealed with epoxy. "Ammonium triodide crystals," she said, "stable until crushed. After that noise, flash iodine vapor. Non-lethal to most adults but buys us seconds." They crept toward the glow. The Deep Shelf was a grotesque parody of a farmer's market. Folding tables sagged under tattered insulin vials, counterfeit antivirals, chalk pocket baggies of who knew what. Traders bartered in gold teeth, Glock magazines, and vintage dollar bills sold as kindling. Overhead, a strip of LED rope spelled, "Make America Heal Again." Corporate irony long dead. Armed lookouts in ballistic hoodies ringed the stalls, openly brandishing M4 carbines. 30 feet from the first checkpoint, Anya drew a breath, pitched both crystalline spheres at the concrete floor. The detonation was biblical. Keening shrills, violet flash, a mushroom cloud of stinging iodine vapor. Stall owners retched. Guards clawed at their eyes. Gabriel dove through the haze, shoulder-checking a gunman, grabbed the fallen rifle, and raked warning fire into the ceiling. Chunks of moldy plaster rained down. Patrons scattered like pigeons. Anya leapt onto the pallet, steering it like a sled. "Throttle!" she shouted. Gabriel swung behind and shoved, quad screaming. As momentum carried crates across slick tiles, past piles of looted Walgreens pill bottles, through a hail of blind gunfire. They burst from the far tunnel just as backup generators sputtered and the Deep Shelf plunged into blackness. Beyond Riverside Hub, the pedway linked to basement delivery ramps for the Art Institute, closed since the Tariff riots left its impressionist wing ash in the rain. There, hidden beneath a tarp, Gabriel found salvation. A battered Ford F-550 flatbed operated by the museum's long-dissolved logistics team. Diesel, unlike gasoline, was still plentiful thanks to agricultural subsidies meant to keep corn transports alive. The tank read 1/4. That might get them to the outskirts if they accepted the next risk. Gabriel backed the flatbed beside the pallet. Together they hoisted crates onto the truck's bed, layering them beneath shredded tarps stenciled with Monet water lilies. Anya rigged a makeshift shock absorption lattice from sculpture packaging foam, murmuring, "Not a single deciliter wasted." They emerged onto Columbus Drive just as dawn bled slate pink over the lake. The city's silhouette looked fragile, like someone had etched Chicago in charcoal, then let tears smear the lines. Sirens in the distance converged eastward. Varga's men were triangulating the pedway breach. They would arrive in minutes. Anya slid into the passenger seat, fingers trembling from adrenaline crash. "Next stop is my safe house in Humboldt Green Zone. We'll skip the barricades using the..." A streak of tracer fire sliced across the hood, ricocheting into the windshield. Gabriel threw the truck into gear. The side mirror revealed an armored Chevy Marauder barreling from a side street, cartel insignia emblazoned in crimson talons. A roof-mounted autocannon spat tungsten slugs, chewing potholes the size of helmets in the asphalt. The flatbed's suspension bucked. Gabriel slammed the brake, yanking the wheel left. The Ford skidded sideways, crates sliding but holding. The Marauder overshot, turret swiveling, chewing up empty air. Gabriel rammed second gear, floored it, and clipped the Marauder's rear quarter. Metal shrieked. Snow, diesel soot, and powdered plaster whipped into a cyclone as the two vehicles engaged in a brutal ballet down Monroe Drive. "We can't outrun that cannon," Anya yelled, fumbling for anything, wires, chemical vials, an idea. "We don't outrun," Gabriel growled. "We redirect." He clipped another streetlight, shearing it free in a sparking spray. The pole crashed onto the Marauder's hood, shattering its windshield and tangling the turret's gimbal. Gabriel seized the moment, punched through a barricade of sandbags, and roared onto a ramp leading into Lower Wacker, a subterranean artery of concrete echo and perpetual night. Taillights strobing crimson, the flatbed plunged into the tunnel. The Marauder recovered, engine howling, and dove after them. Inside the cave-like void, muzzle flash exploded like camera strobes in a pitch-black club. Bullets pinged off steel girders, shattered sodium lamps. Gabriel killed his own lights, driving by memory and the faint bluish glow from Anya's spectrometer. It felt like piloting through the throat of a beast. Ahead, the tunnel split. Gabriel chose right, skirting a service alcove. The Marauder took left. Then something thundered overhead as the upper deck sagged from structural fatigue. A slab of ceiling concrete collapsed between them, detonating in a plume of dust. The Marauder vanished behind debris. Gabriel exhaled, but relief was premature. With a crack, exhaust fumes erupted through the firewall. The dashboard lit up, engine overheat, coolant low. Half the radiator matrix had been shredded. They had maybe 3 miles before the block seized. The chemist and the cop were running on borrowed heartbeats. Above ground, President for Life Trump addressed a nation through emergency frequency radio. His voice grainy but unmistakable. "Tremendous progress on domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing. Don't listen to fearmongers or counterfeiters. Real Americans stick with real factories. We earn our medicine." Gabriel listened as the propaganda bled through the static of every half-functional speaker in the tunnel, echoing against stained concrete. He wondered if Luna could hear the speech from their apartment, if she still believed presidents protected children. The flatbed clattered up a maintenance ramp into the half-ruined River North District, radiator steam billowing. The street ahead was blocked by improvised Jersey barriers, draped in razor wire, attended by a militia in mismatched body armor. The Humboldt Green Wardens, community defenders sworn to keep cartel influence out of their borough. Their leader, a former Interactive Brokers quant named Janine Sue, leveled a bullpup rifle as the truck lurched to a stop. "Identify or ditch your weapons." Officer Gabriel Ramos, 15th District. "What's left of it?" he shouted back. "Cargo's medical. Kids need it. Proof." He yanked the tarp, exposing Walgreens Thermocro labels shimmering a legitimate shade of teal. "Insulin precursors. Pure." "How bad is the Chicago supply?" Janine asked, eyes narrowing. "Days from zero," Anya answered, stepping forward with hands raised. "Help us reach my lab, we'll flood the city." "Free," the wardens conferred. More sirens wailed from the south, cartel reinforcements breaching the loop. Janine glanced toward the noise, then nodded once. "Fastest route is the Elmwood Freight Tunnel. We'll escort. You synth, we guard." She slapped the truck's fender. "Move." The convoy punched through alleyways screened by rooftop lookouts armed with antique Stinger missiles, salvaged museum pieces rewired for thermal flight. Under hate-colored sunrise, Chicago felt like a patient hovering between arrhythmia and flatline, waiting for either miracle or mercy killing. Gabriel, knuckles bone-white on the steering wheel, dared to imagine Luna's lungs filling with effortless air. Anya rehearsed reaction sequences in her head, buffer analogs, genetic folding enzymes, sterile filtration steps, while tracing imaginary circuits across the dashboard. Behind them, Colonel Varga regrouped. Satellite drones spotted the Humboldt barricade going hot. He ordered armored Hummers forward, each flagged with the Peregrine Talon. Streets that had once bustled with tourists now prepared to echo with machine gun reverberations. As the flatbed veered onto the Elmwood incline, its engine coughed, a metallic rattle pre-seizure. Gabriel coaxed it the last 100 yards until the smokestack of an abandoned microbrewery came into view. Beneath the brewery's shattered grain silos lay Anya's sanctum. Rows of jury-rigged bioreactors built from milk tanks, peristaltic pumps cannibalized from dialysis machines, HEPA filters woven from vacuum cleaner hoses and sacrificial N95s. A banner of the Finnish flag hung beside a spray-painted quotation from Rumi. "Where there is ruin, there is hope for treasure." Wardens poured inside, sealing blast doors behind. Outside, distant engines roared. They had maybe 15 minutes, maybe 10. Anya's voice transformed, no longer breathless fugitive but commanding alchemist. "Unpack pallets to cleanroom alpha. Glycosylate at 22 Celsius. Buffer with histidine. We need glassware, autoclave steam, and ethanol scrub. Go!" Gabriel joined, hauling crates, wiping sweat that froze the instant it met air. Wardens formed relay lines. Someone fired up a diesel-powered generator. LEDs flickered to life, haloing the lab in honest white. For the first time since Luna's diagnosis, hope felt molecular. Anya primed the first reactor, its stir paddles whirring like a distant heartbeat. "Within 2 hours," she promised, "we'll have stable analogs. Enough for 2,000 doses. More if purity holds." A warden's lookout burst in, panting. "Cartel armor sighted on North Francisco. It takes 7 minutes." Gabriel checked his Glock. 1 bullet left. He hefted a dropped M4, clipped a half-empty mag, and scanned the room. The lab windows were shatterproof glass, but walls were repurposed brick. "Not tank-proof. We hold them at the main gate," he said. "Buy her those 2 hours." "I fight too," Anya insisted. "You fight in there," he replied, nodding at the bioreactors. "Every second you keep that stir paddle spinning is another kid breathing. That's your battlefield." She hesitated, then pressed a cold-gloved hand to his cheek. "Bring back your daughter, Gabriel." He couldn't speak. Instead he turned, rifle raised, and jogged toward the barricades where wardens welded rebar into cross braces and mounted scavenged .308s on tripods. Overhead, the brewery's smokestack belched diesel fumes, painting the dawn sky a deeper crimson, as if the city itself exhaled blood-tinged hope. Beyond the barricade, cartel headlights speared through falling snow. Colonel Varga's convoy advanced, turrets swiveling, tannoy speaker crackling. "Surrender the cargo and you will be spared. Refuse, and this block becomes memory." Gabriel Ramos chambered around, boots crunching on frost, lungs filling with burnt grain air. Around him, ex-bankers, baristas, and out-of-work coders steadied rifles with shaking resolve. A city's last lymphocytes marshaled to fight the infection of tyranny. He glanced once toward the lab window, glimpsed Anya's silhouette dancing between vats. And for the first time in 2 years, he believed Luna might live to see spring. The first mortar flare arced overhead, blooming white phosphor against the bruise-colored sky. The first mortar flare sizzled overhead, bathing the brewery yard in ghost-white glare and throwing every shadow into razor focus. Gabriel Ramos knelt behind a stack of grain sacks that now served as sandbags. Beside him, a former Walgreens shift manager clicked rounds into a refurbished M1919 Browning as though she had been born behind its iron sights. Beyond the gates, Colonel Arpid Varga's peregrine convoy fanned into a crescent of armored Hummers and Chevy Marauders, turrets glowing orange in the half-light as barrels heated against the frigid dawn. Inside, Anya Leitinen moved through her lab with the precision of a conductor coaxing a final symphony from tired musicians. Glass fermenters the height of children juddered as peristaltic pumps slugged nutrient broth into the living slurry. Fans whined, filtering Chicago's corpse air through improvised HEPA stacks sewn from vacuum cleaner hose and Walgreens N95s. Under ultraviolet inspection lamps, the recombinant analogs fluoresced a hopeful sky blue, proof the folded proteins still clung to viability. She spared one glance at the yard's security feed. Gabriel's outline glowed amber in thermographic relief, rifle steady. The feed flickered, a tungsten slug had scraped the camera, and the image danced with static. Any moment that static might swallow the signal and everything it represented forever. Varga's voice boomed from a loud hailer. "Drop your weapons, walk away, and we will consider mercy. The woman and the cargo belong to us." Janine Sue tapped her earpiece, piggybacking on decommissioned interactive brokers' microwave relays that still straddled the skyline. She routed Varga's broadcast back onto every open police band, overlaying it with a location beacon. "Let the city hear how mercy sounds," she muttered to Gabriel. "Maybe we're not alone." Gabriel nodded, then lifted his own megaphone, weather-scarred, the CPD logo half-dissolved by years of acid snow. "Step 1 meter forward, and the only thing you'll consider is whether your insurance still covers bullet holes." Truth was, the warden's insurance came in the form of stubborn hearts and dwindling ammo. The cartel could afford to grind them down one shell at a time because scarcity was their currency and corpses merely overhead. Still, every second one inside the frosted yard was a second Anya could spin liquid hope into life. The opening salvo began with the hard cough of a .308 tripod. A slug punched through a marauder's headlight, shattering quartz and spraying the turret gunner with razor mosaics of glass. Cartel rifles answered in overlapping bursts, ripsawing the sacks in front of Gabriel, puffing grains like yellow smoke. Molotovs arced from brewery windows. Janine's techs had repurposed ethanol from defunct hand sanitizer lines and splashed across armored hoods. Diesel flames turned fresh snowfall into hissing steam. The Hummers rolled forward anyway, tires fitted with run-flat inserts cannibalized from long-dead Teslas. Varga's men debarked into the choke point, automatic fire strobing between rusted mash tuns that now served as pillboxes. Gabriel squeezed his trigger until the rifle's bolt locked back, then wrestled a fresh, half-filled magazine into place. Someone screamed to his left. Browning gunner hit in the shoulder, but kept firing with her good arm. He tapped her elbow, shouted encouragement lost beneath the roar. They fought like people with nothing left to pawn but minutes. A shape broke cover, lithe, half Gabriel's age, wearing a puffer jacket patched with a Walgreens employee badge. The kid sprinted between vehicles, a length of rebar capped with C4 clutched like a javelin. A warden sniper tried, missed. The kid plunged the spike beneath the flatbed where Janine had parked a generator. The explosion flipped the unit and carved a fiery C-shaped bite out of the brewery wall. Concrete dust billowed. Gabriel's ears rang with underwater silence. When sound bled back, he heard the worst, shattering glass. Inside Cleanroom Alpha, a stray fragment had sliced through a reactor viewport, spiderwebbing borosilicate. Pressure dropped, sterile seals fluttered. Anya's heart stuttered. Contamination at this stage could turn miracle broth into toxin. She slapped an alarm, sealing the compromised reactor behind vacuum shutters, but the batch inside 800 doses was lost. "Focus on the second line," she ordered herself, voice cracking. "Failure is a reagent we can't afford." She rerouted feed lines, amped the agitation rate, and injected backup plasmid to restart expression. The clock reset, 90 minutes to yield. Through another porthole, she saw snowflakes the color of gunpowder drift through the hole torn by C4. If the firefight breached cleanroom integrity one more time, everything ended. Anya pulled a pistol from a drawer, a stubby Walther once carried by a Finnish customs officer, and checked its lone magazine. She hated firearms, but she hated leaving sequences unfinished even more. Chicago's emergency frequencies crackled to life, not with police dispatch. Those towers went dark months ago, but with the ragged chorus of pirate hams, citizen militias, and half-ruined firehouses. Wardens under heavy fire, North Francisco and Division, need manpower, mechets, anything rolling on diesel. Janine's broadcast had found ears. A mile west, the Ravenswood Welders Union commandeered a CTA maintenance cart powered by scavenged Tesla battery banks. They welded a snowplow blade to its nose and headed east. A group of off-duty paramedics from the gutted Northwestern Memorial loaded their last 4 bags into a delivery drone swarm once used by Walgreens to shuttle cupcakes. Hackers from the defunct Interactive Brokers Options desk flooded cartel comms with spoofed GPS packets, scrambling Varga's drone strikes into empty alleyways. For the first time since the tariffs, Chicago's fractured boroughs remembered how to operate as an organism. Gabriel ducked as a marauder turret coughed a burst that split a mash tun like cheap tin. Boiling mash, now just foul rainwater, splattered over Warden's scalding skin. He keyed his radio. "Janine, tell me you've got a trick." Her voice rattled back, "Remember the bean?" Chicago's Cloud Gate sculpture, affectionately the bean, had fractured during the second tariff riot, leaving a 5-ton crescent of mirror steel abandoned in Millennium Park. Janine's scouts had lashed it to a pair of battery shuttles, flipped convex side toward the sky. They were towing it up Michigan Avenue like a shining battering ram. ETA 4 minutes. Make it 2, Gabriel growled, firing blind over the sacks. His rifle clacked empty again. He drew his service Glock 5 rounds. Varga's front line surged. A grenade sailed, landed 6 feet short, but a shard tore Gabriel's calf. He staggered. Blood turned snow to rust. The Peregrine Talon flag advanced, flapping from a pike welded to a wheel rim. Behind him, wardens peeled away to stretcher the injured inside. If the line collapsed before the bean arrived, Varga would pour through like acid and Anya's lab would melt under gunfire. Gabriel pressed a bandage to his leg with one hand and fired with the other, every shot commissioned by Luna's quiet breathing back home. Slide locked back on empty. Cartel riflemen leveled barrels. Time thin to a hair. A different roar cut across the yard, the raw electric shriek of motors over-torqued beyond warranty. The beam thundered into view, driven by the Union cart. Its polished side reflected flame light, snow, and stunned cartel faces in warped, funhouse distortion. The improvised ram smashed a marauder aside, then skidded, carving trenches in frozen asphalt until momentum faltered yards from the gate. But the gap was enough. Wardens surged, towing steel cables. With a communal grunt, they heaved the beam upright, propping it against the breached wall like a shield. Bullets pinged off mirrored steel, ricocheting skyward. For a heartbeat, the defenders had a wall. Varga adapted. He signaled his mortar crews to load thermobaric rounds, overkill for a neighborhood skirmish, but fear paid dividends. His aide cautioned that the blast might incinerate the insulin crates inside. Varga's shrug was almost philosophical. Scarcity is good for margins. The mortar tube thumped. Janine spotted the arcing shell, eyes wide. She slapped the nearest warden's shoulder. Down. The round struck the mirrored beam, finding the single angle that bounced its impact fuse forward instead of penetrating. It deflected, breathed past Gabriel's ear, then slammed into a snowbank 10 yards behind the line. The air detonated inward, a monstrous gasp, concussion sucked flame out of barrels and slammed every chest flat. The snowbank vaporized in a hemispheric pulse that knocked Anya's porthole cameras offline. Yet by freak geometry, the beam's reflective curve spared the brewery. The yard lay cratered, but walls still stood. Wounded wardens staggered up, ears bleeding. Gabriel rose, tasting copper. Inside the lab, negative pressure alarms shrieked, blast wave had ruptured intake seals. Anya barked for patch kits, but the warden's medics were buried in triage. She grabbed duct tape, plastic sheeting, and swaddled vents like bandages, fighting suction that tried to drag her hair into turbine cages. The second reactor's temp graph plunged. Without stable ambient, the culture would crash. Not now, she whispered. She overrode safety interlocks, spiked internal heaters, traded long-term shelf life for immediate potency. Temperature rose, proteins misfold, risk doubling. A gamble, but if the batch died there would be no one left to inject perfect insulin anyway. She loaded the Walther, stepped toward the door, but Luna's empty vial hanging on a lanyard around her neck pulled her back. Make the medicine first. Fight last. She returned to the console, pupils huge in emergency red. Colonel Varga paced behind his firing line, frost smoking from his buzz cut. He pulled a sat phone, dialed the Peregrine Chicago Ledger officer. Authorized the Polaris option. The Ledger officer blanched. Polaris meant high-explosive drone strike, a full Reaper UAV refitted with Tesla mining-grade batteries instead of jet fuel. It was expensive, illegal even by cartel standards, and perfectly designed to erase problems the size of city blocks. Sir, the air defense grid is scrap metal. Launch it. 2 miles southwest, a shuttered Tesla gigafactory roared awake, floor plates trembling as a squat carbon fiber drone clawed up a launch rail and into slate sky. Its bomb load weighed half a ton, enough to turn Humboldt into a cratered echo of Syrian news footage. The drone banked northeast, autopilot slave to Peregrine coordinates. Janine's hackers saw the launch flare via a rooftop thermal cam. She patched feed to Gabriel's earpiece. Airstrike inbound, 5 minutes. Gabriel's pulse hammered. The bean would crumple like foil. The lab's fermenters gone. Luna gone by extension. Unless he keyed the open channel, praying the fringe comms still monitored the city. Any craft, rotor, fixed-wing, hobby, if you're on this frequency, we need a drone intercept. Mark target bearing northwest 161, altitude 1,200 feet. Silence thickened. Then a female voice crackled, faint but steady. Copy. Calling myself Stardust. I've got a flock of retired Walgreens delivery drones wired to one remote. No warheads, but I have mass and motors. Gabriel exhaled. Stardust, you're on. 400 feet above LaSalle Street, a swarm of neon-pink quadcopters, once champions of same-day prescription refill, rose like a kaleidoscopic cloud. Their pilot, a former Walgreens logistics engineer living in a loft of empty pill pallets, plotted a collision course. The Reaper's LiDAR registered the swarm as atmospheric clutter until 20 drones slammed its nose cone, shredding canards. It wobbled, regained level. Another wave hit, fracturing propeller blades, battering sensors with exploding lithium packs. In the brewery yard, everyone looked up as dawn sky flashed with falling sparks. The Reaper's guidance lost, altitude sliding, the craft curved into a smoking parabola and punched the frozen earth 4 blocks east, detonating in a blossom of orange that rattled windows but spared the barricade. For the first time since Vargas stepped onto Chicago soil, Peregrine troops hesitated. Gabriel seized the second silence. He rose atop the sacks, voice hoarse. "Look at your commander. He just threw away $50 million and his air ace to kill people guarding medicine for children. How many of you need insulin? How many have family who do?" Some cartel rifles lowered, uncertainty flickering behind faceplates. Varga barked an order: advance or be shot. A foot soldier, maybe 19, glanced between the screaming colonel and the brewery's scarred brick, then threw down his weapon. Another followed. Wardens shouted offers of safe conduct. Nobody fired. The line of power reversed like a magnet flipped. Varga reached for his sidearm. Janine saw the motion through a rifle scope and squeezed. The bullet punched through Varga's shoulder, spinning him. He staggered, clutching blood. No one moved to help him. Inside Cleanroom Alpha, the second reactor hit critical yield. Fluorescence climbed into the green, signifying folded analogs. Anya triggered harvest. Centrifuges roared, supernatants separated, filters hummed. First vials rolled off the improvised line, clear, potent, lifelines. She cradled one ampoule as gently as any mother holds a newborn. "Gabriel," she radioed, "we have product. Stable. Glucose clamp results look good. Get me carriers, we start loading auto-injectors in 10. Static, then Gabriel's ragged laugh. "Copy, doctor. Yard is secure." Minutes later, wardens escorted a limping chain of surrendered cartel men into a side warehouse, confiscating weapons, offering gauze. Varga lay on a stretcher, eyes full of venom, yet silent. The moose of Command 1,000 yards stared into irrelevance. Janine's crew pried open a network router scavenged from Interactive Brokers headquarters, patched it to Anya's lab Wi-Fi, and blasted the insulin synthesis protocol over meshnet to every amateur bioreactor in the city, then the Rust Belt. Then Toronto. By nightfall, Europe would have it, by dawn, Jakarta. Scarcity's throat was cut. In the yard, Gabriel bound his calf wound, then accepted the first auto-injector off the line. He examined the clear barrel, the Walgreens logo still haunting the plunger from its original life. "This one's going home," he told Anya. She nodded, exhaustion mixing with relief. Overhead, drone smoke dissipated into pale sunrise. Chicago's skyline looked broken, but in the newborn light shards of steel glinted like the facets of something reforged. Across the crippled nation, emergency radio carried dueling proclamations. President for Life Trump, speaking from a backup bunker in Palm Beach, denounced pharma terrorists undermining American greatness and promised swift, decisive tariffs on medical traders. Elon Musk, live on a pirate Starlink feed, offered free bandwidth to any community biolab spinning up insulin because nobody innovates on an empty pancreas. Walgreens' corporate account, hijacked by an anonymous activist, simply posted, "Refill complete." Gabriel tucked the injector into a padded pouch, slung a borrowed rifle, and climbed into the resurrected Ford flatbed, now refilled with diesel and escorted by a phalanx of union cards. Luna waited in their apartment, sketchbook probably empty by now. Anya watched him from the brewery door, lab coat speckled with reactor coolant, Walther at her hip. He raised 2 fingers in salute. She returned the gesture, then disappeared back into the glow, her battle not yet done. There were more vials to fill, more cities gasping. Engines revved. The convoy rolled out, parting drifts of dirty snow. Behind them, the brewery smokestack exhaled steady white steam, a signal to anyone still scanning the horizon for a sign that the future might include them. Chicago, bruised and bandaged, began to stir. Gabriel's convoy rumbled west, cutting a narrow corridor through streets still littered with the fallout of lost decades. The Ford flatbed rattled like a wheezy percussion section, diesel pistons thumping beneath a hood pocked by shrapnel scars and caked blood rust. Behind it, 2 CTA maintenance carts bristled with volunteers from the Ravenswood Welders Union, jury-rigged snowplow blades at the prow. Overhead, a ragged canopy of cloud parted just enough to reveal a sliver of faded sun. It spilled across half-collapsed brownstones and the frozen coils of an elevated track, gilding the wreckage in reluctant gold. Inside the cab, Gabriel kept one bare hand on the wheel despite the February bite, the other cupped the insulated pouch that held Luna's injector. Each red light blinking on the auto dispenser felt like a heartbeat echoing his own. The engines of a home-built escort drone hummed above the convoy, recycled Walgreens delivery quadcopters bound together in a swarm pattern, their aluminum arms painted with the warden's hastily stenciled sigil, an aspen tree bent but unbroken. They crossed the Chicago River at Western Avenue where civilians jointed sandbags onto the railing, planting spray paint signs that read Vaccine Lane/NO Cartels. The watchers waved half salute, half accusation, "Don't you dare fail us now." Gabriel answered with a curt nod, neither hopeful nor hopeless, only determined. Beyond the bridge, smoke drifted from last night's firefight between rival price gougers who tried to hijack an EpiPen cache. Here and there, spray paint murals of President for Life Donald Trump stared from peeling concrete, cartoonish, larger than life, haloed in tariff slogans that already looked as antique as WPA posters. Their edges curled like old parchment as if the wind itself were trying to erase the proclamations, "Make America Earn Again," "No foreign pills," "No foreign will." Someone had scrawled beneath one, in Navy aerosol, "Insulin isn't foreign, tolerance is." Gabriel's leg thrummed where shrapnel had gouged muscle. Makeshift stitches bit each time he feathered the brake. He ignored pain in the way cops had long before this crisis, cataloging it for later. A burst transmission rattled through the CB speaker, Janine Sue's voice brittle with static but unmistakably triumphant. "Brewery holds." Wardens turning surrendered marauders into ambulances. Anya's third batch cleared QC. Shipping out in coolers within the hour. "How copy?" He keyed the mic, "Solid copy." Tinman convoy reaching Kedzie 10. Will deliver alpha vial to residential. Secondary cache to Humboldt Clinic in 30. GPS jitter minimal. Stay icy, Tinman. We've intercepted chatter. Peregrine board in New York is sending private replacements, mercenaries from the Texark free zone. ETA 6 hours. 6 hours felt like a lifetime and a second stacked together. Enough to save Luna, maybe enough to seed a true countermarket before the next wave of muscle arrived. He downshifted at the shell of a Walgreens that had once been his family's pharmacy. Inside, shelves were shattered, fridge doors hanging by one hinge, a pyramid of dust-frosted Valentine's chocolates still stood under a sagging banner that read Heart Health Month, Ask US How. He wondered how many parents had queued here before the hammer order, complaining about pricing yet confident medicine would be there tomorrow. Tomorrow had become a myth. A lookout flagged them onward. Blocks later the convoy slipped through an alley flanked by murals of blues legends, paint fresh enough to gleam. A reminder that creation persisted even when commerce collapsed. He checked the rear view, the cart's welders talking with a gaggle of black-masked teenagers on BMX bikes, ad hoc couriers who'd memorized the labyrinth of barricades. They would fan out with microdoses for the fragile, pensioners on blood thinners, infants on seizure meds, strangers whose lives were now threaded to this fragile supply line. When the apartment came into view, red brick, 3 stories, windows boarded on the ground level, Gabriel's pulse kicked. He parked inches from the stoop, left the motor clattering. A neighbor in camouflage pajama pants and a bear's beanie emerged, shotgun balanced casual as a cane. Her scowl melted when she saw him. "Ramos. Something on the radio about miracle juice." "That true?" "Soon," he said, vaulting off the step. His calf screamed, adrenaline drowned it. He climbed 2 flights that smelled of damp drywall and wood smoke until he reached Unit 3B. The door opened before he knocked. Luna's grandmother, Marta, looked smaller than he remembered, the rationing having shaved pounds from every curve, but her eyes retained that hard coal glow of a woman who'd raised 4 kids on West Side wages. Luna perched on the couch in a nest of blankets, cheeks ghost pale, eyes ringed by the bruised crescents of chronic hypo. She tried to sit straighter, fought a tremor, then offered him a smile bright as sunrise. "Dad, you look like a superhero that fell down a chimney." He knelt. The world tuned out. With the soft click of a safety cap, he primed the injector, pinched the loose skin on her slender abdomen, and pressed. The spring hissed. Luna's sharp inhale turned into a sigh, her shoulders unclenching like coiled springs unspooling. Tears blurred his vision. One droplet fell, spattering her sketchbook. The paper absorbed it like seed to soil. Marta hugged them both. Gabriel's radio crackled, Janine again. "Tinman, tell the kid Chicago says hi." He thumbed transmit, voice thick. Message received. By the time he limped back downstairs, the welders were offloading secondary coolers into the Humboldt Field Clinic's van. The BMX couriers had distributed half their microdoses already, scribbling chalk insulin symbols on stoops to mark treated addresses. Gabriel climbed into the cab, burying primal fear below duty. The road ahead led not back to the brewery but to a rendezvous with interactive map traders on the Indiana line, math geeks formerly employed by interactive brokers who'd pivoted from derivatives to humanitarian arbitrage. They'd brokered deals for raw reagents stuck in decaying supply trains across the Midwest: lysine, biotin, sodium acetate. In exchange, they wanted protocols, a few liters of seed culture, and an attaché drive full of genetic folding heuristics Elon Musk's open Starlink mesh had smuggled out of closed-door NIH servers. He flicked on the dash tablet. A translucent window overlay displayed Starlink latency, uplink stable. Musk's latest broadcast scrolled ticker style: "If you can't disrupt tariffs, disrupt the need." Below it, headlines from makeshift citizen news feeds: "Makeshift bioreactor success in Toledo." Michigan Credit Union forgives medical debt based on insulin output. President Trump threatens martial law in Chicago. He muttered, "You and what army?" But he knew the answer: the Texark-free zone contractors, veterans of border wars, paid in barrels of sanctioned crude. They'd be rolling north on I-55 in up-armored school buses welded with farm plows. The welder cart ahead radioed, "Tinman, you better floor it." Getting chatter of roadblocks near Cicero. "Copy," he said, pushing the throttle until the engine complained. The skyline receded in the cracked mirror, Sears Tower half hidden behind a haze of diesel soot and miracle steam from Anya's lab. His calf ached, but inside his chest something had rekindled, the disciplined burn of a mission larger than law. Late afternoon. Snow turned to sleet, pinging the windshield. At a gas station carcass near the village of Summit, they refueled from a homemade biodiesel barrel stinking of fryer oil. Gabriel chatted with the welders while hacksaws whined, turning road signs into makeshift armor for the flatbed's flanks. A local priest offered stale communion wafers in place of bread. No one declined. As they rolled south again, a blister of red flared on the horizon, smoke plume maybe 2 miles ahead. A drone scout fed them a live vid: cartel cavalry, but not peregrine colors. These trucks bore the insignia of Lions Gate Medical Services, a Shell franchise registered in Flag of Convenience Islands. They carried crates emblazoned with White House seals and USDA disclaimers, but insiders knew the truth: contraband biosim stockpiles harvested from shuttered federal labs meant to flood Chicago at inflated black market price, crushing the free circles before they could seed. Gabriel radioed Janine for advice. "We can detour, but that leaves the reagents stranded." Her reply crackled back: "If we let the lion through, they'll gentrify desperation." "Hold, M." The welders hooped, raised acetylene torches like war standards. A BMX messenger zipped past them northbound, a blur of scarf and determination to warn homestead farmers about incoming stray rounds. They picked ground, an overpass whose concrete columns offered cover and whose underside bore a mural of Mahalia Jackson singing as if to heaven itself. Fallen slabs created natural choke points. Welders parked carts sideways, sparks flying as they tacked rail spikes into caltrop nests. Gabriel stationed the flatbed behind a frost-seared oak, injector coolers removed and stashed in a culvert. He chambered the last magazine in his Glock, strapped in acetylene tank across his back like a flamethrower, an idea born of desperation and welder know-how. Lionsgate convoy came into view, 5 military surplus trucks, 2 with rooftop miniguns. Loudspeakers barked, promising federally approved medicine at patriotic prices, the tariff rhetoric rebranded. Gabriel shouted back that federal approval cost nothing when presidents voided elections. The firefight erupted at dusk. MIG-weld sparks met tracer streaks in a macabre fireworks display. Welders ducked behind girders, flinging thermite grenades that chewed through truck armor like voracious insects. One acetylene bomb wired to a Tesla inverter flipped the lead truck, disgorging crates of mislabeled insulin analog with mismatched halo tags, a counterfeit batch the cartel intended to sell for coin and souls. Gabriel sprinted through a hail of lead, calf wound splitting anew, leg painting his jeans sanguine. He dove beneath the flip truck, jammed his acetylene nozzle through a ruptured fuel line, and emptied the tank. Vaporized diesel mingled with gas, a stray muzzle flash ignited the plume. The blast kicked him clear, sent Lionsgate gunners scrambling for footing on a road that liquefied under rolling fire. 2 remaining trucks reversed, tires shredding on caltrops, engines howling retreat toward the horizon. When silence settled, sleet hissed upon embers. Welders dragged casualties from both sides into the lee of the overpass, laid them side by side. No ration for enemies or allies, wounds bled the same. A half-burned crate spilled vials that rolled, tinkling like wind chimes. One cracked, leaking cloudy suspension across ice. Gabriel crushed it under a boot. Better useless medicine than poison hope. Night fell. Overhead, Starlink satellites winked like molten pearls, each one a pinhole leaking courage down onto a battered nation. Gabriel's convoy limped into the town of Joliet where an abandoned Tesla showroom blazed with generator light, repurposed into a field hospital. Inside, medical students still deep in debt but rich in conviction triaged patients beneath a showroom banner reading "Welcome to the Future Drive." They accepted the reagent coolers with tears of gratitude. In exchange, they handed over morphine ampoules and a spool of surgical thread for Gabriel's leg. A nurse with purple hair saw his limp, guided him to an X Model S display stand turned gurney stitched daintily while quoting the Hippocratic Oath. He asked about the Texark mercenaries. She shook her head. DHS drones picked up a large armored column near Kankakee. Looks like they stalled at a washed-out culvert. Might buy you Sunrise. Sunrise felt heavy with promise and consequence. Gabriel declined morphine. Clarity mattered more than comfort. He accepted a mug of chicory coffee brewed in a Tesla battery kettle that tastes both bitter and hopeful. Outside, welders tuned a shortwave to President Trump's latest midnight address. The timber was all steel and swagger, promising 100% patriotic pricing for American-made medicine and calling any unsanctioned bioreactor a biological time bomb. Rumors said Interactive Brokers' ex-CEO had posted a public letter on Chainblock deriding the speech, calculating that tariff-driven scarcity now cost the U.S. economy $3 trillion digital dollars. A unit of value no longer honored by anyone outside the Florida bunker. Gabriel caught fragments but tuned them out. Across the showroom, he saw a girl in a rust-red hoodie handing out steaming cups to the wounded. She reminded him of Luna, except Luna now breathed easy, upstairs in Marta's apartment, glucose levels steady, pressing graphite to paper as she sketched Chicago Reborn. He recorded a quick holoclip for her, a wobbly view of the hospital, the vials, the reclaimed future. "Hey Firefly, Dad's okay. The world's a mess but it's fighting back. Hold the world inside your sketches, all right? I'll be home before your next dose." He sent it on a mesh ping that would bounce through Anya's brewery net before reaching home. Dawn broke teeth of pink across the prairie. Chatter on militia nets announced Texark's convoy again in motion, circumventing the washed-out culvert. The welders voted, return north, reinforce Anya's position. Gabriel faced a fork, hold with the reagents or race home to reinforce the city that gave his daughter breath. Duty folded back on itself like origami, every crease a child, every edge a father's gamble. He chose Chicago. Always Chicago. They turned north, engines coughing and cold. On I-55, shredded billboard frames marked each mile like mute witnesses. One had once hawked Tesla solar subscriptions, now resprayed with a single phrase in 10-foot letters: "Humanity is the supply chain." Halfway up the interstate, they encountered a ragtag caravan streaming south, hundreds of civilians, some on foot, some in battered cars powered by wood gasifiers, all fleeing rumors of martial law cordons. They parted like water around the flatbed once they recognized the warden's aspen sigil. Mothers pressed infants forward begging shots for RSV, elderly men extended trembling hands for hypertension meds. Gabriel's convoy stopped, distributed what ampoules they could, logged recipients to ensure dosage traceability. Each signature on a battered clipboard felt like a promise carved in stone. An old preacher, beard frosted, took Gabriel's hand. "Bless you," he said. "God walked the earth today and used your boots." Gabriel, raised Catholic, answered, "Today God looked like a Karelian chemist in steel-toed sneakers." They reached Chicago's outskirts by noon. Texark mercenaries converged from the south, but neighborhood sirens and church bells had sounded minutes earlier, rousing barricades thicker than before. Entire blocks welded dumpsters into walls, rooftop gardens now sniper nests, drone swarms buzzing like titanium bees. The mercenaries paused on the Dan Ryan, scanning the improvised fortress. Not one step forward. Inside the brewery yard, Anya greeted Gabriel limping but upright. Her eyes were fox-bright despite 60 straight hours on stimulants and sterile coffee. Hundreds of vials sat stacked in refrigerated crates labeled not with barcodes but handwritten notes: children's ward, dialysis, community clinic. The production line's hum sounded like a lullaby set to industrial techno, a newborn industry singing itself alive. Gabriel offered the last cooler of reagents. She embraced him, the gesture abrupt, fierce. He felt the tension unravel from his spine. Overhead, wardens raised an enormous banner salvaged from a Tesla Cybertruck ad, paint reversed to display a crude silhouette of an insulin pen crowned by a hawk with broken chains, Chicago's new crest. Janine climbed the smokestack ladder, megaphone in one fist. Her voice ricocheted across rooftops. To every neighbor listening, to every street that ever sold hope at markup, the cartel tariffs end here. We are the tariff now and our tax is zero. A roar answered, a sound that traveled block to block until it crashed against lake water and rippled back as echo. 3 days later, Musk's Starlink.net hosted a symposium featuring biochemists from Helsinki, hackers from Sao Paulo, and a shy high schooler from Nairobi who'd adapted Anya's protocol to a $200 vet. The FDA's last commissioner, speaking anonymously, called the movement an unlicensed miracle. Interactive brokers traders, now data farmers for community labs, published live commodity dashboards tracking the price of human kindness, approximated in vials per hour. Their new currency, Heal Coins, minted whenever open-source bioreactors registered a successful batch. President Trump doubled down on tariffs, the Senate, such as it remained, deadlocked. But on the streets from Boston to Boulder, black market prices collapsed in a week. Word had spread, print the plasmid, borrow a pressure cooker, follow the manual. If a cartel tried to corner supply by force, neighborhood foundries simply doubled output. Gougers had brought knives to a flood. Walgreens' corporate board resigned en masse, replaced by pharmacists turned activists. They issued a statement, "We are sorry. We will never license scarcity again." It ran on every surviving Times Square hollow wall, letters rendered in soothing teal. On a late March evening thick with the smell of thawing snow, Gabriel carried Luna onto the roof of their building. She wore a new hoodie, hands steady as she aimed her sketchbook at the horizon. The city skyline glimmered under scattered power grids, some solar, some diesel, some jury-rigged from Tesla power walls. Luna began to draw, graphite dancing. Down on the street, kids played soccer with a duct-taped ball next to a food cart grilling protein print patties. No one ran from sirens because none wailed that night. Wardens lounged on stoops, rifles resting, listening to blues pipe from a rescued vinyl shop. A star rose in the east, maybe Venus, maybe a Starlink cluster reflecting sunset. Luna paused mid-stroke, face lit by rooftop lantern. "Dad, are they going to stop?" He knew she meant tariffs, hunger, men with guns trading pain for profit. He considered every scar on his leg, every cratered street, every erased tomorrow that Chicago had reclaimed. Then he looked at Anya's brewery chimney in the distance, steam still rising. "We won't let them," he said. She nodded as if that settled physics. Another line swept across the page, linking skyscraper to cloud as seamlessly as a supply chain reknit by ordinary hands. In a distant crisis bunker, President for Life Trump tossed a briefing onto a mahogany desk he'd imported tariff-free for national morale. The paper read, Domestic Biologic Scarcity Index, 17% and falling. He raged, demanded new tariffs, but the bureaucracy had discovered a rare commodity, inertia in the face of absurdity. Even his staunchest enforcers wondered how to tax what any garage could print overnight. Miles above, satellites whispered open protocols into the troposphere like pollen, and neighborhoods once measured in despair began measuring themselves in healed children in morning glucose charts that no longer spiked red. Under the indigo hush of pre-dawn, Gabriel walked the nearly quiet streets toward Anya's brewery. Snowmelt dripped from gutters, tapping Morse code onto rust. In his pocket he carried a folded sketch ripped from Luna's book, a line drawing of Chicago reborn, smokestacks that vented medicine, rooftops bristling with home-built antennas, streets stitched together not by asphalt alone but by the shared hum of survival. He pushed open the brewery door. Inside, fermenters churned, phosphorescent blue painting the walls like reflections from a low-orbit aurora. Anya leaned over console readouts, fatigue bowing her shoulders yet leaving her spirit unbroken. She glanced up, smiled wryly. Batch 6 just clear to say. Enough for Boston, maybe Quebec if the heaters hold. Gabriel handed her Luna's drawing. She studied the lines, the strokes of graphite where an old Ferris wheel shone again, windows unboarded, skyline defiant. Moisture glazed her eyes. "It's missing something," she said, voice soft. "What?" "A river without poison." He laughed, feeling the laugh crack open chambers inside that had been sealed since the hammer order. "We'll fix that next." They stood amid the pulse of brewing pumps and thought about nexts, the next compressor that might fail, the next reefer truck that needed diesel, the next father sprinting through gunfire to bring home a vial, the next law that might try to bind the unbindable. There would always be nexts. But for this moment, Chicago inhaled a winter night scented not with despair but with anise-sweet reagent vapor, an aroma of futures distilled. Far away, interactive brokers' open dashboard charted a new derivative, hope/hour, pegged to a city's output of free insulin. The ticker rose. Gabriel reached for a lab apron. Need another pair of hands? Anya tied it behind his neck. Always. Together they calibrated pumps under the hiss of steam and the distant echo of snow plows scraping asphalt, the same asphalt that once trembled beneath cartel trucks and now bore the weight of neighbors delivering medicine free of price. Chicago, lanternlit and scarred, kept breathing.